Welcome back to the Property Podcast. I'm sitting down with Abdullah from Mecca Property Group, the man, the legend, and a very dear friend of both myself and Jordan's. Mate, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here on the couch. Thank you so much for coming along.
No, thanks. It's a pleasure, Joey. I appreciate you inviting me.
Mate, I want this conversation to really be easy, free-flowing. I'm going to pick your brain that never stops, in and around like what you're thinking, what you're seeing, what clients are doing at the moment, and what you've kind of historically seen as that way to build a property portfolio. Because as you know, there's 1,001 ways in which you can construct it with $150,000 properties, one $5 million property, and anything in between. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go a little bit deep and try and pick your brain and grab some of those insights that hopefully the listeners can find really, really valuable.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Joey.
Mate, let's kind of start at the very beginning for yourself personally in terms of why are we sitting here? Why are you the director of Mecca Property Group? Like, how did that journey begin for you?
I think it started like most things for people. It started during COVID, first round of COVID, and I started to just really think about like what I actually want, what I do, what I enjoy. And I think of like the moment that I pivoted in my younger years was when I got into the property market, and I didn't do it well. Like I did partially, half of it was good, the other half wasn't, because I bought in we can talk about that. I bought in an area that had a very high like supply.
Okay.
Like one of those growth corridors where they're building, 200-300 homes a year.
Yep.
And that was a really big learning curve for me, because in the 4 years I owned it, had 3 tenants, went down in value.
Did you exit it?
Yeah, I had to exit.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to exit. And it left a pretty sour taste in my mouth.
Yeah. Why did you push on? Because for some people,
it was just like one bad advice I got off a friend.
Yeah, but some people that would have been like, I'm never doing property again. Like, what made you go, I'm going to push on here in this space?
Well, I just did we called it root cause analysis or 5 why, where you just ask yourself why 5 times to try and find out where you went wrong.
Yep.
And I went wrong just because I bought in an area that just had too much supply, like just too much competition. And I bought the wrong type of property. Like I bought a house that, didn't have, it was old. It had land, but the land wasn't that valuable that you can build something in the back.
Okay.
So I had to be priced really low in terms of rental to attract a tenant. And I didn't know how to read the market, didn't know what I was looking at. But I had one friend that said to me, rather than buying one house in Thornbury, which is like, Thornbury Preston, 6-7 Ks from the CBD. And at the time it was priced like $450, $480, good value. This is 2007. He's like, buy 2 in Melton, because you can buy 2 houses for the right.
Yeah, well, 2 sounds better than 1, right?
2 sounds better than 1. You can diversify your risk. People talk about diversifying risk all the time. So I did that, and I learned a harsh lesson. The first one though was good. First one was in an established area, Mill Park. But the second one wasn't so good. So yeah,
it's really, really interesting. And like you see, like people come in, they've got these battle scars. Do you have anything, obviously not personal to you, but like a client that's come to you with like an absolute horror story? Like, hey, Abdullah, you need to help me because look what I've done to myself.
Yeah.
Is there one that like springs to mind?
Yeah, there's one that springs to mind where they worked with one of those investment advisor firms, or I don't know what they call it, maybe. But they bought an apartment, right? Plan, put a deposit down, 10% deposit. The builder went bankrupt. No one notified her. And then it wasn't until the conveyancer was asking her, like, where do you want your deposit back? But no one.
She's gone, for what? Deposit for what? I'm buying this thing.
Yeah. And she had no idea. It was in a super.
Was this recent? Like years
recent.
ago? Oh, wow. Recently as well.
Like
in this day and age.
Yeah. So bad.
But how much marketing is out there, or how much knowledge is out there now being like, don't buy that type of stock?
You'd be surprised, man. We talk to, like, we get about, I don't know, probably about 20 inquiries a day that we speak to, people, investors. And some investors really, because we do a lot of organic marketing, and Ella does some marketing. She's got her own pod. And he reached out and he said to me, we were really disappointed with the last transaction, the other buyer's agent. I said, oh, why is that? And he said, we found out the apartment only didn't have a car park, and that we were really disappointed. And I was thinking, he wasn't even disappointed that it was an apartment. He was disappointed it didn't have a car park. So yeah, I don't know. Like, there's so much write up about apartments not being great investments, but I still think people get caught out in it because not everyone's on TikTok
It
or
is true.
Instagram.
Yeah.
So unless you're on their social channels
All the time.
you're not going to really see it. And if you're, if you get caught up in a shopping center or on some phone call about buying an investment with your super or buying something,
You might listen.
yeah. And if the numbers add up, then you'll do it.
And so if we kind of come back to these inquiries that are coming through the door at the business, is there a typical type of property that we're buying? Like lots of these BAs have like a sweet spot. Like we buy $550,000 to $600,000 properties exclusively, and we yield you 4.5%.
Yeah.
Is there a sweet spot that you guys are seeing at the moment that you're buying in or you're not buying in?
Not really. I'd hate to say that. Like we pretty much just work for the client, so to see what they need. A lot of clients come to us with very limited budgets, so it was quite limited with what we can get them. And then it's more around, which region is going to yield you the best ROI.
Yep.
But when a client comes to us and they have, no debt, plenty of equity, and then they come to us and say, we want to buy an $800,000 home, that's when we're like, well, let's relook at that. We did one last week.
We had this example not that long ago.
Yeah. So, why don't we, rather than buying one resi that gets you sort of somewhere, why don't we think a little bit more strategic about it? And that's where we're able to really, I feel, provide a lot of clarity to the client, and then we're able to then take that, make that right decision on what type of property we're going to buy, and then go to market and buy it.
Because that's a really...
It yields a better outcome.
Because I think that's really, really interesting because you and I have the pleasure of seeing the clients that come through the doors, and you are right. Like some of them might be a 22-year-old that's scraped up together their 10% deposit, and obviously they are limited in terms of what they can buy. And then the other end of the spectrum, you have a business owner with hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash to invest in. And fundamentally, they shouldn't need different styles of assets, right? And they shouldn't necessarily be pigeonholed into we only buy this type of property, therefore that's what you will buy because that's what we buy.
Correct.
I think that's the thing that I love about your business and your kind of philosophy, and you've summed it up beautifully there. That I think you said that we just basically work for the client and what's in the client's best interest and in their needs. Do you find that when you're speaking to clients that some of them, I don't know what the right word is. I was going to say scared. Scared's not the right word. Kind of taken back when you might suggest a certain pathway in terms of, have you thought about this, or should we try seeing what this looks like?
Yeah, like if they got capacity, I won't hold back. Like I will always share my insights and share, the reason, the reason why I want to share this particular sort of idea.
What's like the most common bit of like I just wouldn't do that because
I never thought we could get into commercial.
Okay.
We don't have, we don't have enough income to buy commercial. I get a lot of that.
Do you think it's not true?
Yeah, it's not true because you can get a commercial property on the lease stock loan. We're doing a lot of lease stocks. Like we're working with people that are low, like they're self-employed, ABN holders, minimal income, but they have like $1 to $2 million worth of cash, and they're like, take $1 million and go buy a house with it. But it's like, okay, what's your plan? Where are you? What are you doing?
Could we deploy that?
Yeah, could we deploy that in something better?
Yeah.
So we did that. We did that recently. Bought a client a property in Tasmania for 1.87 with a WALE of 4 years, returning 143 net, which is around 7.8% net, which is pretty high. I think the cap rate for that spot, it was in Hobart, so it wasn't regional, but the cap rate should have been about 7. So I think we got it for a good price. Well, I believe we did, because they offered it to us 3 months ago or 4 months ago, and all the leases were expiring. And I said to the agent, like, man, we're not going to buy these.
Yeah, go and renew them.
With the leases about to expire, even at 8.5%. So I was like, would you go high 7s with new leases? I'm like, yeah, if it's the same tenants, yeah.
But talk to us about so that was a higher yield than what you would usually be.
Yeah.
Like if you were to talk about like when I think of commercial property, like what kind of yield should I instantly think of?
I think, look, if you probably want to start commercial, you probably want to be over $1 million. You don't want to be under $1 million.
In terms of purchase price, yeah.
Yeah, it just becomes very hard to find something that's good with a decent tenancy. But you'd probably want to be somewhere between 5 to 6%, 5% net to 6.
Yeah.
And then 5% is metro, and then, anywhere above sort of 6% or 6% plus is going to be like a smaller capital city or regional.
What are the downfalls of going to those slightly higher yields?
There's no downfall really. It's just a cap rate. So, if that market, if that regional centre is going to go through a bit of a downturn in their local economy, and there's, people are going to move out, which we've seen happened in Townsville in 2017, happened in Bunbury, happened everywhere. Like we had a bit of a dip in 2017 or 2015 to 2018 across the country, across all smaller capital cities experienced a bit of a downturn. So yields, the cap rates increased, right? So that happened everywhere. It didn't happen just...
Did it happen Metro?
No, Metro was okay. Metro held. But I would say, like, you're getting a high yield because it's regional. That's why you're getting.
That's why you're getting it. Yeah.
But you're still going to get fixed increases per annum. Like some of the best performing properties that we've bought over the last 5 years have been commercial in regional.
And is it like a particular style of commercial product? Doesn't necessarily have to be.
Yeah. So like if I was to list sort of low risk, like the lowest risk commercial you can get is industrial.
Yep.
Because the way valuers look at the way they value risk is based on one way is based on use. So they look at a multi-use asset versus a specialized use asset.
Yep.
So a multi-use asset like industrial, you can have a retail store, you can have manufacturing, you can have, it depends on the zoning of that particular site, but generally speaking, you can have retail, manufacturing, logistics, storage, a community center, a gym, right? So you have a lot of different types of tenancies, and that's why you generally get like you get a lower rental income. So industrial is like 130 to 170, across Victoria, probably 200 to 250 in Queensland, right? In Brisbane and Gold Coast. So yeah, so with industrial, that's probably the lowest risk, and you probably get that somewhere between 5 to 6%, depending on where you are around the country. And then you've got number two, you've got, I would say, retail's on a bit of a comeback in Melbourne, but I'd say retail across the country is not bad. Again, it depends where and the location you're buying in and how scarce the product is. So you got to do your homework. But I'd say retail is also, good, but that becomes a specialized use asset. I'd say also medical is good. Medical has really sticky contracts, lease agreements. When I say sticky, I mean like you're talking 5 years with 5-year options, another 5, like
bit of stability
20
there.
Yeah. So we've got a vet clinic under due diligence at the moment. We bought it with a nets 5.5, I think, or maybe 5.3. But it's got a 20-year lease, like 5 with 3 5-year options.
Can you talk to us about those options? What's the likelihood that people don't take them up versus do take them up? Tenancies.
Well,
I know it's vague, but like more often than not, do they take them up?
Yeah, more often they do it because they invest in the area. Like I'll give you an example, like this vet clinic that we got under DD at the moment. They've been there for like 35 years. Like, so the likelihood of them leaving is...
Where are they going to go?
Yeah, where are they going to go? So like it's unlikely.
Yeah.
The market there, it's in a location that has lots of pets. If you go there, if you just go and inspect the place, it's always busy. It's always got people coming in and going out. So, I think you look at the history of that site and it gives you a bit of confidence. So yeah, so I think and the options, I think the critical thing when you're looking at option agreements is every 5 years there's a market review. Now, some tenancies, some lease agreements don't have the option to have a market review. It's just another 3% if they choose to go up.
Yep.
Now the challenge of that is you're priced out of the market for like 20 years. That's really risky. So you just have to make sure every option period you can actually reset to market rent, because more likely than not you're actually going up every 5 years.
Is that something that you're doing as part of negotiating with when you're purchasing the property, or is that done by the legals?
No, it's already so we're buying commercial leased investments. So they're already leased out.
Yeah. Okay. So you're buying
we're just
that
reviewing.
agreement.
Yeah, we're just reviewing the lease to see what the risks are.
And you mentioned you got this one under DD, right? So how much extra due diligence is there in the commercial space versus what you would typically do in the resi? Is it a lot?
Yeah, a little bit more complex because it's like resi is like it's like property, right? It's like you're looking at the property and location and data, the street, the inspection, the building inspection report. But when it's like commercial, it's like almost a business
review.
Yeah, it's like a business review, right? It's like you're doing your due diligence on the business to make sure that they're going to be invested enough in your site, stay there long term, and you're investing yourself into that business, really. So it's a different relationship. I actually think it's one of the more ethical property transactions out there.
In terms of?
Well, just like in terms of like just property transaction, because it's like a win-win situation.
Yeah.
Right? The business is pouring a lot of money into that site.
You're
they
giving
spend
them
money
the
on
stability.
fit out. They're spending money on maintaining the property, spending all your bills, right? And then you're obviously buying the property for them so they can function a business out of it. They don't have the capital to buy the site themselves. So it's like you see it as a win-win.
You mentioned there that they're paying the bills. What aren't they paying in most cases? I know it can vary, but in most cases, what aren't the businesses liable to pay?
Good question. I would say, well, it depends on the lease, but in like, if it's a residential lease, then they're not paying land tax. Yeah. Or property management fees.
So they the two, land tax and property management fees.
If it's a retail lease,
Okay.
yeah, because the Retail Act will supersede.
But
any
otherwise,
lease.
are they even paying property management fees and land tax?
Otherwise, industrial leases will include those two. Yeah.
Wow.
So really, like the landlord really only pays for like capital improvements, like
what?
if an aircon system failed, they'll
Solar?
replace it.
Well, you tell me that sometimes on the tenant as well.
What do you mean?
Like if they want to fit out solar, like that's capital
No, the
expense on the landlord, right?
The landlord will have to do it,
Yeah,
yeah. But the tenant couldn't force the landlord to do it.
to
though.
do that. Yeah. So there's obviously a lot of pro commercial chat there. Yeah. I don't want to discredit the fact that you do buy residential property.
Yeah.
Let's take a half step back and come back to, because commercial is not for everyone, and it may not be attainable for lots of like your kind of first time investors.
Correct.
If we talk about the residential space, what are we kind of seeing in terms of, obviously there's classic buy and hold, like put that strategy aside because I think most people appreciate how that works. What are some of the other value add plays that you're employing, undertaking, that you've seen worked, that you've seen hasn't worked in general in the resi space?
So I think what I've seen work really, really well is buying those houses where you can just create value over its life cycle. So, the old house in the big block that you can renovate the house to get a better tenant. It's got a really good functional floor plan. Like, don't ever underestimate how important a floor plan is. They're very, very hard to change, especially on older homes. So if you have a floor plan that looks really good, then that is a big tick for us, because it won't take much. It won't cost much to actually renovate it, right? And then, the land in the back, you could turn on the cash flow play and put a granny flat on, or you could build a secondary dwelling in the back. Like, I find those investments are like the best. And right now, Melbourne probably offers the most value. Like, if I look at in the whole country at the moment, I think Melbourne has. So you can still buy properties under 800,000. Like even under 700,000, you can still buy properties where you can sort of create that value over its lifespan.
So if we kind of touch on that, this great floor plan, are we doing anything in particular with it? Is it a lazy floor plan where you potentially add like squeezing an extra bedroom in, or is it just simply so you don't have to knock around structural walls?
Yeah, so you don't want to knock around structural walls. So you want to walk into a house and have like bedrooms on one side, and then you have the living room, kitchen, and potentially another living room behind it, right? And then on the right hand side, when you have the bedrooms, you'll probably have a laundry, you have a bathroom and a laundry. So you could really maybe you could punch a hole through and do an ensuite on that third bedroom, and the laundry you can turn that into
the bathroom.
A bathroom.
Yeah. Is it is that to manufacture equity, to increase the rental income?
Yeah, well, both. You'll have a 3-2.
Yeah.
And most likely the suburb that you've bought that house in only has 3 1s. So it'll really stand out when you come to rent it. It'll improve the value of it naturally.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really require a lot of work.
To do that, because the floor plan that you bought was already kind of in a decent enough shape. Talk to us about, and I don't want to generalize too much, but talk to us about, say, apartments, villa, townhouses, whatever you want to call them, something as part of the strata complex versus the opposite to that, a freestanding home. Are you seeing that anything strata titled never makes sense, or in most cases not?
I think like there's still some that makes sense. Like,
do you think we'll see a shift back towards that space as people are becoming more and more priced out of freestanding home?
We're seeing that in Sydney.
Yes.
We're seeing apartments, they're improving month on month in terms of value. Probably not the high-rise ones, but the areas that have sort of like supply caps, they're the ones that are seeing the growth. The areas that are building, skyscrapers are the ones that are still sort of price even, or they're price balanced. Look, I think where you could find good opportunity in the lower end of Melbourne, and I think is probably buying those villa townhouses where it's like a 1 in 3, 1 in 2, really sort of like close proximity to the city, where you can still sort of get them under 700,000 as well.
Like, what's the land size on those usually?
Like 200 to 300 square.
So they're not like 40 square meter boxes.
Yeah, they're not. And like, they're not very far from the city. And I think the price differential between units and houses is it's getting like, because what tends to happen is the housing market will move, and then the units will
chase it.
will chase it pretty much. It'll become so undervalued that people will start looking into it, and then it'll sort of follow through. But yeah, I'd say, villas, townhouses are okay. Again, depends on the suburb, depends on location. I would like apartments, probably still not a fan of apartments. Like there is a high supply. The Australian government or the Victorian government are really focused on infill land, and they're focused on, building more skyscrapers. So is Sydney. They're seeing that as a way to solve the whole affordability crisis. Because look, it's true. They're solving the supply side, but it's not really solving housing still, because housing, people where they prefer to live in a house is still where there's a supply issue.
And even if, I'm from Sydney, right? And even if you were to potentially look to buy one of those, most people would be buying the more smaller boutique blocks if they were going to buy an apartment over those skyscrapers close to a train station anyway.
So they call them walk-ups.
Exactly, yeah. Three-story walk-ups, something like that,
yeah.
with low strata fees, no lifts, no pools, anything like that.
You know what it stands for, walk-ups? Do you know why they call it walk-ups?
I thought because you walk upstairs.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. I thought you were going to say like WALK stands for something, like it was an acronym. Okay, so it's not a never. It's just it needs to make sense for that market.
Yeah.
Because I'm saying, like, if you only had X amount of dollars to invest in, is it worthwhile waiting and not investing at all, or get into something that you can afford?
I'd still get in, but you just want to make sure that whatever you're getting into, there is like a need for it and there's a demand for it, and that you're going to get some, return on your investment. Yeah.
And so if we come back, we've spoken about like some value add plays within the residential space, but is there a kind of formula that you see people like, how do we go from 1 to 2 to 3 properties, obviously apart from saving a 20% deposit every single time? Like how else can we scale our portfolio?
Well, one of the ways we've seen some of our best clients do it is because they're in jobs where they can get that 10% no LMI.
Okay.
And they're scaling pretty quickly because they got the high income and
they've got 2 deposits in one.
Yeah, correct. So if they're in the medical field, or if they're in nursing, or pretty sure accountants can do as well. If they work at a bank, if they're full-time employees at a bank, Australia's got a lot of bank employees. They can literally get a loan with a 10% no LMI.
Can the bank employees get that at other lenders? Like,
no, just at their lender.
Just at their lender.
Yeah. But it's a great way to scale, though. Yeah. It's a great way to scale. And then what you can do is basically, understand what your serviceability is and then get in. But there's going to be there's going to be a cap, though.
Of course, yeah. Do you find that like most investors that you're working with don't understand what borrowing capacity means? Yeah,
they'll say that the bank said I can borrow $1 million, and then you look at their deposit. Oh, my deposit's like 100,000. Like that's how much cash I have.
Yeah.
Well, that's not enough. You need like 150.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So really, it's not It's like you can only buy a property for 700,000.
700K.
Yeah.
And when I working with your clients, when we're kind of modeling in different scenarios, and people are kind of going, okay, well, I've got maybe 2 acquisitions and then or 3 properties under my belt, and then I'm capped from a servicing standpoint, or I've already got 2 and I'm looking to buy another one, and then the broker said, hey, that's it, there's nothing else here. Is it at that point in time that you're seeing then people transition the shift towards commercial property to undertake that lease stock like you mentioned?
Yeah, well, we got some clients who they've got. Well, we're getting some clients that are coming through the door who have already built a portfolio like 6 or 7 properties, and they just can't seem to get past the 6 or 7. And then this is where we're sort of talking to them about lease stock. Sometimes it's the broker they're working with is probably not at the level that can support them, so you refer them on to someone else. Because
what other strategies do you have?
Well, it used to work last year, but not anymore. The whole trust.
Yeah.
Well, look, I would say like commercial is probably the best. Like when you start to hit your cap and you got access to equity, then commercial is a great way to get your next property. And then as that starts to earn an income, well, then that gets reflected, which
should help your servicing on those.
Correct, and which helps you buy again.
Is there like a typical sequence, like I've just heard this bandied around before, like if you buy a commercial property for X, it should have itself paid off in however many years' time? Like, do you have a formula that you would work with, or not really?
Not really, but it's usually around 15 years. I think you can pay off a commercial usually. But look, we're so more like a lot of our clients are still at that sort of acquisition phase where they're trying to buy, in that sort of 7 to 8 year window, they're trying to buy like 3 or 4
Yeah.
properties.
Yeah.
And then, and the second stage is like, how do you optimize each of those investments? Like, what can you do to create further equity? Do you renovate? Do you build a granny flat? And then the last stage is consolidation. And that's where you sort of consolidate and you move over to commercial.
Are you seeing that people are, I know what the answer is, but are you seeing that people are getting like, I want to just be at that level now when I'm probably here in year 2, I want to be in year 13?
Yeah. Look, I think we saw that a lot probably 2 years ago, a year ago, 2 years ago when Perth was firing and everyone was, it was quite normal for
people to make a couple $100,000 here and there.
Yeah. It was quite normal for people to return like 20% per annum. That's when those markets were firing. I think the next 5 years is going to be a little bit different. I think the whole like government, what's coming out of like all the discussions that government's having around capital gains tax,
Negative
gearing. I think that's starting to plant some seeds with investors around, okay, well, what's next now? And I don't know if the government's identified who gets the benefit of CGT or not, but it sounds like they're trying to solve the housing affordability issue, right? That's by removing CGT, because it then removes the amount of investors in the market.
Speculatively buying to sell for a profit.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, most investors, if you look at most investors, they actually create the supply for renters. So as soon as they bring in that law, or if it does pass, I think we will find yields will start to come back up again, to a point where, those renters will either have to start looking for a loan
accommodation.
or alternative accommodation.
Yeah.
But I think there's probably going to be more of a demand in the commercial space over the next 5 to 10 years, just because of the amount of red tape there is on residential and the rental laws that are in place. Anyone that owns a property portfolio of like 3 to 5 properties would know the monthly requests that come through and the standards now properties have to be in. And I don't think it's ever going to go backwards. And look,
it's probably not a bad thing, though,
right? It's not a bad thing because, like, like Zena and I still rent first, and like we're just considering now buying, an IP, and we're thinking, do we just buy a house to live in or another IP? And it's like, well, we get drawn to the property to live in, but then you're pushing $2 million. But then you go, okay, well, do we just go for that IP? It won't be 2 million.
No,
it will just be like 800 to a mil, unless we go commercial, right? So yeah, I think it's going to just come down to, I think like the rental laws in Victoria are so pro tenant that it makes it hard to actually want to buy to buy your own place. So if you're comfortable, especially if it's a good house.
You mentioned there that you're still going down that rent vesting route. It's a topic that I love, and I love just chatting with anyone about it. Talk to me about your thought process, because you're saying you're obviously toying around with the idea of going down that principal place of residence route. What are the kind of the internal conversations that are happening there? Like what are the pros? What are the cons?
So we list the pros and cons, and I think the PPOR place probably just restricts us in terms of our growth.
Yep.
Like it will restrict us because it's like a
hit to capacity.
You hit capacity and
deposit, cash,
everything, repayments. Non-tax deductible repayment. So.
Just quickly on that. So in your little circumstance, are you seeing a spread between, I love running this math on the platform. Are you seeing a spread between what you would pay in rent versus what your repayments would be at like a 80% LVR? Is there a big spread?
Yeah, there's a big spread. Okay. It's like
2-3x multiply in some
3x.
cases?
Yeah, 3x. Yeah. And that's why, like, unless the rent goes up and we start to get to, maybe,
and your landlord has to do all these checks that we have to do for as residential property investors, right?
Yeah. That's why I think the commercial space, I think over the next 5 to 10 years, like 5 years ago, no one was talking about talking about commercial. You'd had to really explain the concept of commercial. And the only people that were interested in commercial is if they are renting a property themselves, a commercial property.
Like commercial owner occupiers,
or
right?
if one of their friends own a commercial property and tells them how good it is, that's when they actually consider it. But now we're seeing more and more investors like, okay, I've got 200,000 or 300,000. I don't want to be negatively geared. I don't see the whole idea of spending $1 to save 30 cents, or 35 cents,
whatever it is.
Yeah, it's a flawed concept. Like negative gearing is actually a flawed concept.
So you're like this kind of typical price point, however, with the commercial property, this kind of quasi entry level of circa a mil, what's that buying you? We keep drifting back to this commercial conversation, which is cool. What does that buy you? Is that strata?
You can still get freehold in regional, which is not bad. But metro will be strata, yeah.
Would you rather the strata metro commercial property than the regional freehold?
No, I'd rather a major regional.
Yeah, really?
Freehold, yeah.
For the
So,
same
like,
money?
Yeah, like we bought one last year for like, I'll just say that because it just came to my mind, but we bought one for 740,000. National
Freehold.
tenant, freehold, 1,000 square meters.
What do you say about the thing's going to go vacant for 48 months? I mean,
Well,
I'm exaggerating.
The
but
area we bought in, that's a very good question, but the area we bought in, anything in that area leases up within the first like 2 weeks. Like it's
2 weeks.
Well, that's what the agent told me. It's in Bendigo. It's an area called Golden Circle. I think so. Hang on.
Isn't that juice?
Could be. Is it juice?
That's your kid's juice.
I'm fasting today. We should disclose that. I haven't eaten since the morning.
We should have said that up front.
It's not Golden Circle. It's something else. Anyway, but there is this particular area. It actually sits right in the middle of Bendigo. So it's got access to all the areas of Bendigo within like 20 minutes. So commercial property there is quite hot because it services the area really, really well. So that's why I considered it.
So like this whole argument of whenever I buy a commercial property and when the lease expires, I'm going to be out of pocket for a year and a half.
No, that's maybe office or maybe like a small little retail shop, but an industrial place, no, I don't think you'll be out.
Because what
the worst I've seen. Well, industrial has a lot of different tenants.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
But industrial, probably the worst I've seen is like 3 to 4 months.
Okay.
Best I've seen is like 2 to 3 weeks.
And I've seen residential properties are a lot worse than that.
I've actually had a client who had a tenant in their Perth commercial industrial. The tenant asked to break the lease and leave. Happy to pay for the lease, but he's just moved on to a bigger place because the business has outgrown the site. They found another tenant like within 3 days where they negotiated a 5-year lease. The lease that the tenant had originally was only 3.
So got a better lease.
So got a better lease
in 3 days.
more money it took like 3 days, and they didn't even have to advertise.
So is it what just understanding what you're actually doing, understanding the area, understanding the property that you're
supply and
buying,
demand,
right? Yeah,
like it's just supply.
Like you could get caught out. I'm sure you could buy in a place where you probably do have the 2-year vacancies.
I've heard a lot of horror stories, especially when you hear like guarantee returns. When you hear buy this commercial property and we'll guarantee the first year rent. Well, number one, Number one, did I say?
No, I'm saying number one, run.
Yeah, run. Well, the return that they're guaranteeing is actually built into the price, so you're paying for it. Number 2, if they're saying guaranteed, there's a reason for it. It's because they can't find a tenant, and they need that 12-month period to secure a tenant. So
run.
Don't do it.
So is there like the more you spend, the better quality property you're going to get in the resi and the commercial space?
Yes and no. So commercial, the more you spend, the better quality tenant you'll get.
Okay.
Right. So that works well for commercial. So like if you tell me, Abdullah, I've got $5 million, do I go buy 5 little $1 million properties, or do I just buy one $5 million property? I'd say probably buy 2.
Yeah, 2.5.
Two and a half.
Yeah.
Or if it was one really good 5 million, then we'll do it. Right? We did it. We bought a $6 million childcare that had like a 15-year lease and 3 10-year options. We calculated
That'll
the
take
lease.
that client through to probably after they died.
Yeah. We'll go to his kids and grandkids. But the lease on that property, if they see out the whole term, just based on a 3.5% increase, no major sort of adjustment, it's $40 million across the life of its.
Is the rental income?
That's the rental income. Crazy.
Wow. What was the buying price? 6.
5.96. Yeah, 6. Yeah, just under 6.
And then in the resi space?
Resi, so where we're seeing the most, like, this is what we're seeing across the whole country. It doesn't really matter if you're buying in Brisbane, Gold Coast, or Perth, or Melbourne. But the more affordable end of the market is seeing the most amount of growth. So where the first home buyers are, where the first time investors, Sydney investors, Brisbane investors, they're all looking into, that sort of sub 950K market. So anywhere from like 600 to 950, we're seeing a lot of activity.
So like spending $2 million doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a better product with more growth in the resi space.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Do you find the yield falls off at a certain point?
Yeah, so above, I think when it hits above, or what I've seen, when you start to hit above $1 million, like 1.2, 1.3, your yield starts to, starts to reduce.
What are you seeing for like those investors that are buying these properties with the 3.5, 3.6% yield, like how are they going from 1 to 2 properties and adding $30,000 of negative gearing to their portfolio? And then if they do that 2 or 3 times, they're looking at 60 or 80 odd grand out of pocket from a cash flow perspective. How are they doing it? Or are they doing it?
Some are. So, but the ones that are doing it are building a granny in the back.
Okay.
And it's getting that sort of that yield up. And then once they revalue the property, they're taking the cost of the granny flat back out. And then they go buy another property with it. But I think it's good to have sort of a diverse portfolio. So we bought a property for a client, in a regional. So I'll tell you one particular client. We bought him a property in Ballarat. So it was early 4s, like 420K, very cheap. On like 800 square meters, you can develop it.
Was it a while ago?
No, recently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But it's like a weatherboard home. Like it's not, it's not, it needs work.
Yeah.
Like it needs like 20K worth of work. Then we bought him a really like solid investment for, in Melbourne. We bought him a house in Faulkner and built him the granny flat.
I know.
You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And then we went for sort of a high yield play in Darwin.
Okay.
And we bought there about just over a year ago now. And that was returning about 6.87% yield.
Wow.
So that was like just a high yield play.
Yeah. Freestanding?
Freestanding, yeah. They've done quite well out of that too. Although Darwin's copped a lot of flack. But
I know it's had been the topic of much debate of late, but he's seen growth.
Yeah, it's worth in the low 8s now.
And
So
we know the yield's been there from the outset.
646.
So the answer to that question is, well, he's gone and changed asset classes, not necessarily asset classes. He's gone and changed location, chased a little bit of yield to help balance things out, and solved the cash flow crisis with adding a granny flat.
Correct.
So realistically, his worst performing with respect to yield would have been the property in Ballarat. But even still, that would be quite high yielding anyway, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's. I think it's yielding at like 4.2%.
Yeah, so not too bad.
It's the worst. It's the lowest. So it doesn't really like having a low value product doesn't mean you have a high yield. Yeah, but it was such a well balanced portfolio for someone who went pretty aggressive in 12 months, and like he's got the return there. And look, Darwin's an interesting place. Like it cops a lot of flack online, but I think you got to look at like what's driving Darwin. If you look at the GSP rate, which is a gross state product, it's one of the best performers in the last 12 months. So the GSP rate for WA is 3.7%. Northern Territory is 4.7%. You know what GSP is?
Yeah. And so that was the last 12 months, right?
So if the economy is growing,
yeah,
like the property prices aren't growing for no reason. There's obviously more jobs, more employment, there's more demand. So, if the economy is growing, it means it's going to create more work, which means, they're going to open up borders to get more people through. They're going to offer temporary visas to get people to have their PR. It's more of a short-term play. That's definitely like a 3 to 5 year play, but it's certainly done well.
And would you ever see that clients would consider exiting?
Yeah. Well, the plan is like there is an exit strategy.
Okay.
Anyone who buys there, it's like there's an exit strategy. We just have to know when to exit.
So it mightn't be a 25, 40, 50 year hold like a Faulkner purchase,
like
maybe.
a Faulkner or Ballarat purchase. No, it won't.
Okay.
Ballarat's it's been there, had gold mines there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's been there for over
150 years or whatever it is.
Whereas Darwin's had, it's an interesting place. It has the second highest income per household. It has a 60% of the workforce is government.
Yeah, right. 60%.
60%, yeah. Very stable. So it's not mining. It is very concentrated in defence.
Yes.
Obviously because where it is.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of investment, in the defence bases that are there. And they do have. So there's one stat we look at which is incoming supply risk. So we look at how many development approvals, how many houses have been approved to be developed, and you divide that by the population that's there. So one of the reasons, and this is actually a great stat to look at because it actually explains to you the housing crisis in Sydney.
I was going to say, do you have the data on Sydney?
So Sydney is 0.55.
Okay. Which means?
0.55 approvals per 100 people. So for every 200 people, there's one DA approved.
For every how many?
For every 100 people, there's one DA approved.
Yeah.
Now, Sydney and Melbourne are like similar population. I think Sydney's 300,000 more, correct?
Yep.
And the housing prices, there's like a 60-70% variance at the moment.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Melbourne is 0.99. So for every 100, there's one, right, for a new house. So that just tells you the house supply overall, how it actually puts pressure on housing. And that's one of the reasons why Sydney has is where it is today. And it's not going to be relieved until they solve the housing crisis. And Sydney does attract a lot of wealthy families from overseas that want to move to Australia and want to base in Australia. They'll liquidate their investments overseas or their assets.
To bring their cash here.
And they will buy a property.
In Sydney, probably more than likely. Yeah.
In Sydney, if they live there. And most of their investment is going to be cash. Or most of their, they're not going in with a 10% 10% deposit.
Yeah.
They're going in with 30, 40. I know because we've actually represented most of those expats or
Many of
new
them,
migrants that have come in and they're looking to buy something. They've sold everything. They had land. They had, they bring in like $2 to $3 million.
What are they putting down? Like 50% deposits?
I would say anywhere from 40 to 80%. Yeah. I've never seen 100 because sometimes they just need that little bit more. It's like, well, don't worry about your cash. Just go and borrow the money.
Yeah, just a tiny little bit.
Yeah, just to top yourself up and buy.
And so you think that story won't change for Sydney?
I don't think it will change, no, because I don't think there's no focus on housing. It's more opening up supply, and Sydney is like it's challenged as well because it's wedged between
geographically,
it's wedged between the Blue Mountains and the water, and the city starts from the east or from the eastern side and sprawls. So Northern Territory, they're the lowest in the country. It's 0.2 for every 100 people. So
worse than Sydney.
It's the lowest in the country. So even if there is a demand push, right? There's not enough supply to cater for that demand.
Yeah.
So that's why, and if affordability is very strong, it was, I'm not sure about now, but when we started buying there 18 months ago, we found that it had the best in terms of affordability, right? So, like in terms of income per household, I think it was, so Melbourne and Darwin were the two most affordable capital cities in Australia. Darwin was number 1 and Melbourne was number 2. Darwin was at 25% income to household debt. Melbourne was at 44%, right? Sydney's at 66%. So, interesting.
Very, very. And so you're still bullish on that market or less so now?
No, it's just grown too much now. But the ones that got in early did really well.
And so forecasts, your little crystal ball for Melbourne?
Well, it's so forecast. So we're still seeing some, solid monthly returns out of Darwin. We're still seeing, I was in Perth on the weekend, just to have a look at a commercial property, and I just went around some houses, just to sticky beak and see what's happening. I talked to the agent, what's happening in the area? What's happening to the housing market? I heard it's crazy. So like there was one particular house, they had 35 groups through, right? First open for inspection, 35 groups. Now, if that was in Melbourne, that's a hot market. We'll have agents, mate, just counting the offers.
Absolutely.
These guys, they're saying, it's quieting down a bit. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, 6 weeks ago, there was 80 groups through. 80.
80.
80. He goes, November.
They need to extend their open times. Yeah. They need to be open for 2 hours to get that many people through.
He goes, but 35 is still good. 35 will get probably 10, probably 10 offers, 8 to 10 offers. That's crazy, right?
Absolutely.
So every market's different.
What do you think is going to happen here in Melbourne moving forward?
I think Melbourne.
It's all this chat about mean reversion and.
Is what?
Chat about mean reversion, and it's Melbourne's time coming up now. It hasn't done anything for the last decade.
I think Melbourne's not going to be a fast booming market.
Slow burn?
I think it'll be a slow burn. Okay. Yeah. I think there's still a lot of. I think we need to see some confidence come back in. I think Melbourne still struggles with sentiment. I think this is an election year as well, so it'll be interesting to see what policies the new government brings.
Have you felt a bit of a shift in sentiment though? I feel like there's more investor chat now.
There is with more. So like investors that know what they're doing are looking at Melbourne going, there's opportunity there. Right. Melburnians are looking at Melbourne going, oh man, property's so expensive.
Right, okay.
They're saying property's so expensive. I'm like, man, you have no idea
what's going to come.
What's expensive. If you want to know what's expensive, let's go to Brisbane.
Yeah.
Let's go on a road show to Sydney and Brisbane and Gold Coast. And
then we'll come back.
And then you'll be like overpaying for the property you're trying to buy.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, we have seen a shift already. Like our clients have seen a shift. The ones who've renovated have seen a shift about 18 to 20%. The ones who are just passive hold, they've seen probably about 11 to 13%.
Yeah, so
like
slowly
average
starting.
of 12.
Yeah,
which is not bad. It's pretty good. But 18 months ago, we were offered properties like in August 2024. I remember this distinctively. We would say a vendor had an expectation of 850. We would go nah, it's too high. We would wait till post auction and we would buy it for 800 or 790. Wow. That the guy that bought Ballarat and
yeah.
Don't want to disclose his name, but that property was presented to us for 850. They bought in Fawkner.
Wow.
Right? We bought it for 785.
Because you just knew.
Because we knew.
Yeah. Let it run.
And
let it fail.
Yeah. So and then they were desperate. It's like, all right, man, 785, it's yours. Yeah.
So coming back and just kind of rounding out the pod, 'cause I think we've gone really, really deep and we've bounced resi, we've bounced commercial. I thought we were going very heavy in the commercial when we kind of balanced it out there. No, we balanced it out with a bit of resi chat.
I actually do most like 80% of our business is resi.
That's what I wanted to finish with. Like, what kind of is predominantly the business is more focused in the residential space, but we are starting to see that prominence in terms of the I don't know, surgence of commercial property, so to speak. But is there any kind of last imparting bits of wisdom that you can instill on listeners, maybe who are just kind of starting out their portfolio, in terms of a bit of a takeaway message that you can give to them to encourage them along the journey?
Yeah, I think don't get caught up in the analysis paralysis. And get yourself ready. So talk to a broker, get your pre-approval. You get 3 months to buy something, and then get someone if you're buying an investment, just follow fundamentals, right? So have a look at how much, and a lot of this stuff is online. Have a look at how many owner-occupiers there are versus renters. Have a look at open stats. You can find social housing on that address. It will tell you exactly what the percentage is. Have a look at, where the house is located. If it's on a main road, well, don't buy it. If it's across the road from shops, don't buy it. Buy an inside street. Just think about use your owner-occupied
brain, right?
Yeah, your owner-occupied brain when you're buying the investment. But I think, just get into the market. I think it's a great time to get in. I think, if you asked me 10 years ago when's the best time to get in, I would have said now, and I'll still say now. I just think housing in Australia is a very undersupplied asset class. People, Australians do love it. It's very tangible. There's a really big need for it. We have a very growing population. We also do get a lot of migrants because our economy is quite good, apart from the last sort of 3 months.
So do you think that it will, the prices will just continue to grow?
Yeah, well, I don't see a relief, Joey, unless you can.
I can't, but I'd like to pick the experts' brains and
there was a write-up in Perth where people were camping outside of a housing development area to inquire or to book one of those land lots to buy. That tells you like Perth has a land crisis. I don't see that here. Mate, they'll roll the red carpet out. For you to just come in and buy a lot.
But you are right. We are property obsessed. We are absolute fanatics for it. And I think that people would better go and get 400 jobs before they lost their homes.
And I'd probably, any investor out there that's looking to get in, just ask yourself, what are you actually looking to achieve out of this purchase? What do you want to achieve? Is this going to lead you into an owner-occupier? Is this going to, do you have money that you can just put to the side so that, you can hedge against the market and then maybe take the equity out and use it to do something else later? We're getting a lot of Sydney clients who are priced out of Sydney. Good jobs, really good jobs.
Good income,
good savings, but they can't, get their house in Balmain for 3.5, 4 million.
Yeah.
So they're like, might as well
go and invest elsewhere.
Yeah, and we've bought them properties across the country, and they've done quite well. And so, rent investing is a real option. I think it's just detaching yourself from having to buy and live in the place.
And the stigma behind rent.
The stigma behind renting. I think that comes from our parents.
Yeah, I think it's slowly dying off. Do you?
Yes, but
I think as more and more people are doing the whole rent vesting route, I think it's the stigma starting to.
I don't know, but when I talk to people about it, they're very like, "Oh my god, that's a great idea." I'm still getting that.
It's the first time I've ever heard of it.
Yeah. Oh my god, that's a great idea. Because I do a lot of keynote speeches.
Yeah.
Especially from the community I come from. And when I talk about rent vesting, they're like, oh my god, that just solves a big problem. Okay, now I can get into the market because you can hedge against the market.
Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting. I would have thought that most people would have known or heard of the phrase. You'd be surprised. But I just read something the other day that you'd be surprised how many people have just realised that you can get email on your phone. There are people that are hiding under a rock.
But we're in an age now where how many apps could you reckon you can put on your phone these days?
I don't know.
Back in the day, 126 gig iPhone.
It'd stop. Yeah, you get
is plenty of space to do whatever the hell you want.
Now if you don't have a terabyte.
Now you need a terabyte, and you need cloud on top of that.
Of course.
And you need all these apps, and then there's apps that help you app the app or manage the app. There's so much information. So I think we're living in a time where, there is so much info out there where people genuinely don't know what to do.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's more And this is why I think buyers agents or buyers agencies have become very popular now, because it's like
Cut through the noise.
you cut through the noise and you align yourself with someone that you see eye to eye with. So it's like, okay, well, let's see what they would do. And then if it makes sense, we'll follow.
Then if it resonates with us, then we'll execute on
and
that.
if it doesn't resonate with us, then we won't. Because we have group chats with clients, but we will sometimes see ChatGPT questions.
Yeah, and you can pick that out from a mile away.
And you just know it's not their tone.
Yeah.
But it's good. Like, obviously they're using the tools that are available to ask questions that they don't know what to ask,
But I think you've summed that up beautifully in that go and seek the information and have the conversation with many different professionals, but and then find the one that resonates mostly with you. And I think, like what you mentioned at the beginning, like that you just go and work with the clients based on their needs is a beautiful philosophy. Not like this is all we do and this is all you can do. It's let's understand who you are. You said this well. Let's understand what you want to do and what you want to try and achieve, and we'll help you along that journey.
Yeah.
Mate, thank you so much for the conversation. It's always wonderful to sit down. I'm sure the listeners will take a lot out of it. If anyone wants to find you or learn more about the business, where can they get their eyes and ears in a little bit more, Abdullah?
So we do a lot of organic marketing. So there's a few channels. You got Mecca Property Group, you got Abdullah and Invest. That's my personal channel that I share a lot of, I do house inspections.
Seen them. I love them. I love the ones where you get under the sink as well.
Yeah. I actually saw another BA company do that recently.
Copy?
It's good. It's good. I'm glad.
With your tie and you're like moving your tie away to get under the sink.
I really down-dressed today. Look, fasting's tough, man. Like, you think it's like, what can get me out of the house in the quickest time? And when you're fasting, you don't want to use any brain power. It's like, okay, so this looks good. I'm just going to leave the house. This will do today. So you got that our website, meccapropertygroup.com.au. But yeah, we'll be happy to chat.
Wonderful. Thanks so much again. Pleasure as always.
Thanks, Joey.